All right, welcome everyone to the final day of our project management course. We have an exciting day planned for you. So the first couple days we talked about how to find funding and how to get a grant, how to get your work funded, and then everything that happens, leadership, team building, and all the prep work that goes into your project before it really gets started. And then day 2, we talked about all the things that happen during project implementation and things that you need to be aware of and problems you may encounter and how to deal with those. And now today, we're going to be talking about the first session is information and data management. So data collection, data storage, data access, and all things related to that. The second session is going to be real-time data visualization and data analysis. So what do you do with that data and how do you use it to make decisions? Then we're going to be switching gears a little bit and talking about outreach, communications, and publications. So once you're doing your project and you get your data and you've got your visualizations, how do you communicate about your project to a general audience, or how do you publish your work? How do you not just communicate about the findings, but just about the project in general? So that's the communications topic. And then finally, we're going to wrap things up with sustainability and how do you keep your work going beyond the life of the funding and what happens next after the project is over. So with that, I again welcome you to today, and we will get started. I will pull up the first slide deck. And again, please let me know if there are any issues with viewing the slides. Okay, so information and data management. We have Derek Moore. He's from Penn State. He's a cloud architect and data engineer at Penn State. We have Winket Mukami. She's from the Dream Team Agro Consultancy. You heard from her before. She's the lead of the Innovation Lab of Current and Emerging Threats to Crops in Kenya, and she's a field extension officer and a researcher in Kenya. And we have Romaric Tianderdiogo. Sorry, I did practice that. He is from PlantVillage in Burkina Faso. He's the leader of the Burkina team. He's instructor of practical work at Naziboni University in Burkina Faso, and he's a phytoecologist. So with that, please go ahead.
Thank you, Calista. I'm going to give a course of data collection and management. Data collection consists of gathering information, quantitative and or qualitative, to access a situation set. Data management consists in storing, organizing, and keeping up to date a project, program, etc. Go ahead. You need why do you need to collect data? You need to collect data to improve the implementation of projects or program objective. Also provides analytical elements to enable informed operational decision based on relevant information. Also help leader, manager, and all actor of the project in their strategic planning. Go ahead, Calista. We have 6 steps in data collection. The step 1 is to identify and select problem and set goal. For example, of problem, we can say farmer challenge in the climate change phase. For example of goal, we can say assessing farmer resilience to climate change effects and identify resilience practice in the face of climate change effects. Go ahead. Step 2, you must recruit a team and define responsibility. For example, we can recruit data collector, team leader, data collector coordinator, data processing officer, data quality controller, dashboard manager, and data analyst. For the step 3, plan an approach and methods by defining the area of intervention, the size, the population, etc. By defining the collection tool, for example, we can use a smartphone. It is allow the collection of enriched data type, such as a picture, voice recording, movie, GPS coordinate, etc. You must define the data source that will be used to collect the information. We can do experimentation. We can do individual or groups survey. We can go to the field to take a picture or observation data. And by defining the duration of the data collection. Go ahead, Kalista. For the step 4, we must train participants to ensure that all team members understand their role and responsibility, as well as the survey and tool use. For the step 5, if experiment with the collection process. This is very important step because it can help to solve some practical problems. For the step 6, we can start data collection. Go ahead. After data collection, it is the data management. It is necessary to check all collectors have transferred their data and the number of data collected. Also, data storage for the paper survey, fill all forms systematically and scan them. For digital survey, download the raw data and store it in your system. You must develop report on collection challenge, initial collection result, data quality use. For the result, we can present the first result of the collection at conference or to the public. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm going to give the speech at WinKit.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to talk about the methods we use for the data collection. Mostly, the two methods we are using for data collection, we have the PlantVillage Neuro app and also the Odk app. And both of these apps, they are Android mobile apps. Next slide, please. On this page, I'm going to talk about the PlantVillage Neuro app. And this app, the PlantVillage Neuro app, is an app which usually uses the artificial intelligence expertise so that it can be so that one can be able to diagnose the crop diseases. And some of the advantages of using these PlantVillage Neuro app to collect data. The first one is that you're able to detect the disease.
Winkit, I'm having trouble hearing you, Winkit.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. Okay, I'm going to repeat. about the PlantVillage Neuro app. The app is the app usually uses the artificial intelligence expertise to be able to diagnose the crop diseases. And some of the advantages of using the PlantVillage Neuro app is first, one is able to detect the disease and you're able to get the advice or the disease which you have detected. So you are able to know how you're going to control that disease. And also the next advantage of using the PlantVillage Neuro app is that it is easy for any person to use in any country, and it has high level of accuracy. And also the other advantage is that you're able to have clear pictures, and in that you're able to have a better visualization of what is happening in those different fields. The other advantage is that also with that app, you can be able to get weather updates depending on your locality. And also that PlantVillage app, there's an amazing feature, the AG Observatory, whereby you can be able to have the weather forecast in the next 1 week, and also you can be able to see the conditions of the fields, the different fields in those areas where you're collecting the data or your team is collecting the data. And also in that app, we also have the resource part, of which the resource part has different crops and the different diseases attacked, the different diseases which attack those crops and how they are controlled. So these are the advantages of using the Neuro app. The disadvantage of using the Neuro app in collecting the data is that it limits one, especially it limits one on the data which is collected, especially if you want to get the data more so of the farm history and also about the farmer information, the more detailed information about that field. It usually limits you. Next slide, please. Okay, on this slide, it shows example of the accuracy of the PlantVillage Neuro app. As you can see in this, the first picture, the accuracy is 93, 97 of the disease which is detected, which is a high level of accuracy. And also the page which I was talking about, the AG Observatory, as you can see, this is a page of the AG Observatory, whereby you can see the weather forecast. Like for example, this is in Kenya, you can be able to see the weather forecast. Next slide, please. And also, as I was saying earlier, you can be able to get more information about the fields, the different fields. Like for example, this is a field of the Innovation Lab. You can be able to get more details about the field, the condition of the fields, as you can see in the first page, and also in the second page, you can be able to have a clear picture of what is going on, what is the stage of the crops in the field. Next slide, please. Okay, on this, I'm going to talk about ODK. In a simple way, I can define ODK as an open data kit that allows one to collect data in a mobile device using questionnaires which are created. And these questionnaires depends on what you want to get from for your data. But it depends on what you want to collect from the field. And some of the advantages of using the ODK to collect data is that you're able to get a wide range of information. You can be able to get a wide range of the information you want. And also, using the ODK app, you can be able to get the GPS of the farm locality. And the other advantage is that the new ODK, which currently we are using the QR codes, it helps the data which is collected to be automatically sent to the server once one of the team collects in the field. So it makes one to be able to see the progress of each and every person in the field of how he or she is collecting the data. And also using this app, you can be able to have an option of what you recommend the farmer to do, or depending on what the question is in the questionnaire, you have an option of giving the recommendation. The disadvantage of using this app is that it usually minimizes, it has minimum accuracy, as mostly it depends on the approximation. It depends on the person. It usually depends on the person who is collecting the data. So finally, I would like to thank you for listening to me and also for the opportunity. And I will hand over to Derek.
Okay, thank you, Winkit. So as was just discussed, we have these two different data collection systems, the PlantVillage Nuru app, which is a custom Android app that the team developed, and then ODK, which is an open source tool, and there are advantages and disadvantages to each. So I primarily work on the backend infrastructure and data management side of things. This is one of the we call them panels to analyze data sent up through Nuru. So the purpose of the panels is really to do a deep dive on individual records, review them for data quality. You can get a general sense of trends by looking at recent activity from records, where records, certain positive or negative records have been uploaded recently, but it's not intended for, excuse me, for thorough data analysis. One of the other features of the panels are we have a nice what's called role-based access control. So we can restrict who can access data by country or by role. So we can say they can view records but not edit them, or they can edit records but only in a certain country. And this has been an essential requirement from many of our partners. We have separate panels developed for each type of Nuru survey we have. Here you're looking at one for locust surveys, but we also have these for wheat and cassava and maize and so on. One of the costs here is the fairly high startup costs. This is something that our team goes back and forth on constantly. This is all custom developed software. And so it does exactly what we need it to do, but there's a fairly high startup cost in terms of developing the new surveys to put into the apps and then developing all of the backend IT infrastructure. ODK doesn't have those costs, but gives us less flexibility. One of the things that we found has been really important here is the ability to mark individual records as legitimate or suspect or used as part of training. So if you look down in the lower left of these images, there's the yellow train and the red suspect and the green confirm buttons. That's how we do a first pass of data quality. We have either external collaborators or internal PlantVillage staff do all of those. We also use these tools as a way of getting bulk data export out. If you say want to pull the data out as CSV for more detailed analysis in a specific tool, you would do that as well. Another feature that we found is really useful is soft delete. So you can think of this as if you've used a spreadsheet, if you know that you can hide certain rows if you don't care about them. That's kind of what we do when you delete records. We don't actually delete them. We just mark them as deleted in the database. That way we always have an undo feature. Can you go to the next slide, please? So that was what I just showed was an example of the Nuru backend. So speaking of ODK, Ramarik mentioned the need to scale up slowly and add data input validation. This is one way that we do that with ODK. So you can use Excel to define an ODK survey. And so these are just a couple of inputs we have on one survey we have going on right now. A simple example would be the date the survey was taken. We found that there were often strange input problems. We were getting sort of odd data when we were first piloting this survey. So we put some constraints in. So this might be a little hard to read, but over in column I, in row 3, we default the date to today's date. That's just a nice convenience feature. And assuming the person's phone's clock is set correctly, we'll get accurate data. And then we also have a constraint in column F that says the date can't be in the future. So if the phone detects that it's currently May 25th, you can't say you're taking the survey on July 17th, for example, because we would see sort of odd inputs like that. In row 12, this is asking about when the farmer planted maize. And so there's sort of parsing out what's in column F. That's basically saying the planting date has to be in the past, because we would see sort of odd results if people would take the survey on a particular day and they would say that the planting date was in the future. So these are just a couple of minor examples of things we saw when we were initially piloting the survey in one county, and we wanted to scale it up to the entire country. And so this was really good to catch early on. Another useful thing with ODK is you can localize them into multiple languages. So you can see in columns C and D and G, those are marked as English. So it says label English or hint English or constraint message English. You can translate ODK surveys into multiple languages just by adding more columns into Excel. This is something that we're planning on doing. We're just getting ready to kick off a new resilience survey across multiple countries. We're going to take advantage of this feature in ODK to do the data collection. So I recommend looking at, if you're using ODK, it's a good tool, but I really recommend looking at the constraints and the localization features. Can you go to the next slide, please? So when the data comes into ODK, we're using something called Odk Central, which is an open source server to host the data. So this is kind of equivalent to that system you saw a couple of slides ago. So in the image on the right, you can just see a table listing recent surveys. You can drill down into those and review the records, the individual values there. And you can either edit the values, you can accept each individual record, or you can reject it. So if you see in the image on the left, it has approved, has issues, or rejected, and you can leave notes. This broadly does the same thing as what we did with Nuru. You don't have the nice map view here. So there's a little less customization. It's not quite as nice as the custom developed software, but this works out of the box. You just download it and install it, and you don't have to hire a development team. We have had some reports from some of our analysts that Odk Central doesn't work very well when you have lots of records. We're doing a large IPM survey right now that has thousands of records coming in, and the postdoc in charge of the project has found that Odk Central doesn't quite work for doing data review here. So that's you may need to pull the data out and use an external tool to do data review. Could you go to the next slide, please? One thing that we found is really important is consistent geocoding of the data. So we often want to do things like look at how many reports we have in a particular county, or we'll need to restrict access to a certain record. So people in Kenya can see records from Kenya, people in Iran can see records from Iran. And so we need to know where the records were taken. The process for doing that is called geocoding. We have two separate geocoding systems in our tools, and that can create some confusion. One is the user enter data. So often when we're doing a survey, we have a text box where we prompt the user to type in where was the survey taken. And that's important because there may be local place names or sort of local idioms that we need to capture, the analysts need to know. That's really important. For example, we're doing a survey on animal diseases with pastoralist communities in northern Kenya. It's really important to capture local place names there. At the same time, that's user entered data, and it's going to be, you can have typos, you can have inconsistencies. And so that makes doing data filtering particularly difficult. I think at one point we had 16 different spellings of Burkina Faso. When you looked at, somewhere in, or no, I'm sorry, it was Cote d'Ivoire. We had 16 different spellings of Cote d'Ivoire. Well, that makes doing data grouping really, really difficult. If we want to say, how many records do we have in Cote d'Ivoire, and they're not spelled consistently, that's difficult. So we have a second geocoding system where we use an external data provider. We give it the latitude and longitude, and we get back standardized data. That's really important for doing grouping and access control. So it's important to have both systems. It's always important to recognize when you're looking at data, say in the panels that we saw a couple of slides ago, to know which location data you're looking at, and to keep the analysts apprised of which one we're looking at as well. But we found that this is really, really, really important. Next slide, please. So finally, when we have all this data from Nuru, for example, we can feed that into another system called Superset for doing dashboarding. So the images we've seen so far for looking at individual records, doing data quality control, as Remark mentioned, you can kind of get a sense anecdotally when you're kind of down in the weeds, but it's really also nice to see at an aggregate view, how many surveys do we have coming in? Are they of one type or a different type? Are they showing that you have disease or not disease, or you see locus or you don't? Where are they located? And so for trend analysis, we use Apache Superset, which is an open source tool for doing dashboarding, and these all sit on top of the same database. So we have multiple systems, as has been mentioned. We have the observatory that's for looking at individual farms, really geared towards Dream Team members and farmers. We have the panels that are used for data quality control, and we have Superset that's used for trend analysis. We're going to talk more about this, I think, in the next session. So I think with that, that's the end of our presentation, and we can take questions now.
Great, thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions. First of all, can you please explain other methods of data collection?
You're muted, Remark. You're still muted.
Sorry.
You're fine now, thank you.
Okay. For this question, for the qualitative research, we can do two methods in deep interview. With a deep interview, you can gathering as much information as possible by asking people to answer open-ended questions. But the face-to-face interview can be time-consuming and expensive, but they have very high response rate. For the quantitative, you can make a survey in close-ended question. It permits you to structure it and standardize to allow people to answer them easily. You can do also a test or experiment. For the survey, you can do also a survey online. It is another effective method when collecting data. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. For the second question, while doing farmer survey for social data, we do key informant survey. Please provide detail about key informant survey. how can we collect data and do analysis? For this question, we can say that key informant will be interviewed to gathering critical information about the impact of the crisis and the priority needs of the community. Key informants are selecting for the knowledge or the community and local situation based on professional experience, leadership, responsibility, or personal experience. Adequate representation of informants of different age and gender is necessary to ensure the accuracy and impartiality of the assessment. For the analysis of this data collection is depend of our objective. Yeah. I'm finished, Kalisa.
Okay, thank you very much. So our next question is, unlike other African farmers, Ethiopian farmers do not speak English, French, or other foreign languages. Amharic is the language at least everyone speaks. And what is your plan in that regard? I'm assuming that means for the surveys.
I could answer that. So the app that we built for FAO Elocus 3M should be in Amharic. And when we were working in Ethiopia during the locust crisis, I think we had sent out information in 4 languages. It's relatively simple to translate the app, and we will certainly work on getting it translated into Amharic and other languages in Ethiopia.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions. There were a few that came through in the chat that we answered with in the chat directly. Some questions about the Neuro app and other methods of data collection. So maybe we'll give a few minutes in case people have other questions. Okay, so there was a question about data collection for the other methods of data collection, specifically, I guess, for the PlantVillage Neuro app, and I don't know if that was addressed.
I'm wondering if the person who asked the question could expand a little bit more. What did they have something specific in mind they wanted us to speak to?
I don't know. We can wait and see if any more information comes through. Oh, here's one. What do you do when people refuse to answer your survey? Does anyone want to take that question?
Winkit?
Okay, on that, if you're doing a survey in the field and the person is not willing to participate, it is advised that let the person be and don't force the person to give you the information, and then you go to the next person. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Winkit. I am not seeing any other questions come through about this topic. Maybe. Okay, here's some more. This is more explanation here. After doing the survey and you have to send the data through to the Neuro app, how can I know that my data is appropriate to the analysis?
So inside the panels that we showed, we have an ability to communicate back to the person that collected the data, and we can report to them that if we consistently see data quality problems from them, we can contact them directly to try to get better education for them. For ODK, we'd have to communicate back to the person that took the survey through outside of ODK Collect.
Okay, which crop varieties are next priorities to be included in the Nuru app IA feature? IA, I think, is it artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it's just backwards. Yeah, AI.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're working on a coffee disease model right now that should be ready to go very soon. I think Pete can talk about that either now or in the next session. I think there might be some examples of that as well.
I'll just add that we're also working on a banana model, and then also maize, and in the very early stages of beans too. But
there was a question in the chat if Nuru could provide the number of affected plants in a field to know incidents. Yes, we can track that per field. We see the PlantVillage initiative as a short-term or long-term development project in Africa. What are the specific expected implications of the program? David, do you want to answer that? Mm-hmm. I would think that we would see it as long-term.
Sorry, can you repeat it for me, Derek?
Do you see the PlantVillage initiative as a short-term or long-term development project in Africa? What are the specific expected implications of the program?
Certainly long term, certainly looking at it for the next 25 years. And the expectation is that it grows to be at least 10,000 Dream Team members in all 53 African countries. The idea is that it ultimately will reach 200 million people on a monthly basis, and measurably increases the productivity of 200 million farms. This is the goal that we're aiming for. So we're talking about an enormous change in the current status of Africa to increase the resilience. Bearing in mind that Africa is 1.2 billion people, by 2050 it will be 2.3 billion people, 1 billion of which will be children, and it'll be 2.2 degrees hotter in 2050 than it currently is. It's predominantly an agrarian society. So what the Dream Team are young people with passion and intelligence who are enabled by supercomputers. So these phones running AI, but also connected to the Ag Observatory and the satellite system. So we really believe that they're in a phenomenal position to change the continent. And it's a good question. Today is Africa Day. So it's a very good question to ask. And the future is very bright with these amazing young people powered by technology. Thanks.
Great, thank you, everyone. So we're going to continue the conversation in the next session, which is sort of related to this one. And please continue to ask your questions, and we will continue to get them answered.